Supporters of Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro invaded the presidential palace. You've seen the story through the day. They defaced the country's Congress and stormed the Supreme Court. Before I get on with it, just take a look at these visuals. Did they give you a sense of déjà vu? Did they remind you of something that happened 2 years ago in America? Let me explain. What happened on Sunday in Brazil was a stark reminder of the January 6th riot in America, when former US President Donald Trump supporters stormed Capitol Hill. 2 years on, history has been repeated in Brazil. It seems the country has been infected with the virus of Trumpism. Let's see what actually happened. It has just been a week since the inauguration of leftist leader Lula da Silva. Bolsonaro supporters are still in denial. Severe polarization grips the country after far-right former President Bolsonaro lost the election in October. He still claims that Brazil's electronic voting system was prone to fraud. Sounds very familiar. Since then, a violent movement of election deniers had been bubbling up in the country, and the lid finally blew up on Sunday. Dressed in yellow and green of Brazil's flag, thousands of Bolsonaro supporters carried out a riot. They breached all barricades set up by the armed forces. The extremists vandalized political buildings and left behind a trail of destruction. They smashed windows of the presidential palace and flooded parts of Congress with a sprinkler system. And as if that wasn't enough, they ransacked ceremonial rooms in the Supreme Court. Questions are rising. How did the riots even take place? And reports say that the protesters gathered at the army headquarters. Now, these headquarters are 8 kilometers away from Congress, the Supreme Court, and the presidential palace. As you can imagine, it is a long march, and experts are now pointing out how security forces did not intervene. Video footage shows that they offered little resistance to protesters. An army bridge is permanently stationed at the presidential palace, but the rioters managed to storm the building and vandalize it. All facts point towards one question. Were officials from the inside involved in the riot? Did they play any part in orchestrating the chaos? Take a look. It took a little over 3 hours to bring the situation under control. The police faced off with the rioters to regain the buildings. Tear gas was fired. Busloads of people were detained by the police at the site. Brazil's Justice Ministry says at least 200 rioters have been arrested, but reports are putting the numbers at 400. Even after being detained, the protesters held their ground.
I'm speaking to the world. This is injustice. There are no criminals here. We were just protesting. We want to save the country.
In the aftermath of the incident, President Lula toured the Supreme Court building to see the damage for himself. He described the events as barbaric. He has ordered the government to take control of the federal district security and vowed severe punishment for the culprits. Bolsonaro himself had been silent for nearly 6 hours after the rampage. He ultimately took to Twitter to deny all allegations of any involvement. The former president also tried to hurl dirt on Lula. No surprises there. Now, whatever is happening in Brazil isn't a new spectacle. The world looks up to the West in various aspects, and this riot too seems to be inspired from the US. The incident has brought back memories of the Capitol Hill attack, and many political analysts had seen it coming. Far from the capital, Brazilian industries had been facing unrest for months. Highway blockades have disrupted grain shipments and meat-packing operations. Brazil's financial markets have swung sharply in recent weeks due to stretched public finances. All eyes have been on Lula to see how he would reconcile his big spending promises. With questions looming over Lula's leadership, Bolsonaro had also sown doubts about Brazil's electronic voting system. And that too without any evidence, just like Trump, who did not concede after American voters elected Joe Biden. Trump had been Bolsonaro's biggest international ally. We can't forget that. Bolsonaro's tactics had already won him the title of Trump of the tropics. The situation right in front of your eyes, it's difficult not to draw parallels. Both the leaders are extremists. They are infamous for their fascism. Both have large armies of supporters who are under the spell of their ideologies. Both had faced a defeat they were reluctant to admit, and now both have been at the heart of a barbaric riot, attacks on political buildings, of using their fanatic fans to do their dirty work. How far will these leaders go to gain power, to satisfy their ego and wash off their political defeats? WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.